Hey friends, welcome back to Zuzu's Time Travel. Before we go wandering into the weeds of medieval weirdness, make yourself cozy, dim the lights, fluff your pillow, and if you're sneaking this at work, don't worry, your boss in 1382 probably believed onions could cure a hangover. And hey, if these stories help you drift off or just escape the chaos of today's world, hit like and drop a comment. What's the strangest job you think you'd accidentally end up doing in a medieval village? Fool, gong farmer, wandering goose wrangler? I'm not judging. Now, imagine you're born under a full moon, during a thunderstorm. You scream at the wrong time. You smile too much. You name a chicken. And just like that, they decide you're the fool. Ready? You're going back to the year 1297, and this is your life. You're not born in a hospital, not even close. You're born on a dirt floor in a smoky, one-room cottage. There's no doctor, no crib, no diapers, just a midwife who smells like garlic and anxiety, whispering to your mother, "It's not crying. Right. Not like the others." Now let's pause. In medieval Europe, especially in small villages, everything was a sign. Too many teeth at birth? Witch? Too much silence? Devil? Eyes that don't quite focus? The fairies have taken the real baby and left a changeling. The church had its views too, some kinder than others. A child born odd might be seen as divinely touched or cursed. So you, dear listener, might already have the village guessing your fate before your first sneeze. They might nickname you early. Odd Tom, Lullaby Jack, Hen Boy. Not out of cruelty, well, not always, but because medieval folks believed names mattered. Names gave shape to things they didn't understand. Comment below, what would your medieval nickname be? Midwives were complicated, respected, sometimes, feared, often. They were healers, herbalists, and if your baby blinked funny, possibly witches. They worked with animal bones, old prayers, and poultices made of moss and mustard seed. And in that cottage where you were born, the midwife probably marked the door with soot or scratched a cross into the wood, just in case you were, different. But what counted as different? Well, maybe you laugh at shadows, or cry when the cows moo. Maybe you don't speak when others do. To the modern world, it might seem like autism, anxiety, or just introversion. But in your world, it's mysterious. And that makes it dangerous. That midwife, she might quietly tell your mother, best keep him close, best keep him quiet, best not let the priest see him, yet. And so begins your life on the edge, not hated, not beloved, just watched. What would have made you strange in 1297? Let us know in the comments. Names were a big deal. Your name wasn't just something pretty for monogram tunics, it was power, protection. So if you were born odd, your parents might name you Simple Tom or Ned the Quiet. Not because they were mean, but because those names could fool the spirits. Ever heard of apotropaic naming? It's when you give a child a humble or ugly name to trick the bad spirits into leaving them alone. Because who would want to curse a baby named Useless Bert? So your name might have been lowly by design. Names like Hodge, Bumpkin, or Goody Numb. Imagine starting every day hearing your name and knowing it was meant to protect you from invisible forces. Strange, right? But is it really that different from calling someone Little Troublemaker today with a smile? Ever had a weird nickname growing up? Drop it in the comments, we promise not to laugh. If you think medieval parenting was all hugs and bedtime stories, let me stop you right there. Your crib? A hay-filled basket next to the pigs. Your toys? A stick and a rock? Your lullaby? Your mother yelling at your older brother to fetch firewood. Still, they loved you, in their way. Peasant families were practical. Children worked early. If you were odd, you might have been spared the hardest jobs, but not out of mercy. More out of uncertainty. Fear of breaking you, or fear of what you might say to the priest. So your days are quiet, you watch, you murmur to the chickens, you laugh at shadows, and sometimes You say strange things like, "The well is watching." That's when your mother hushes you. Because saying weird things in 1297 can end in bonfires or worse. Awkward questions from the church. But even so, you grow up. With muddy hands, a wild grin, and the beginnings of something they don't have a name for yet. Who raised you best? Your family or your chickens? Vote below. The term mental health didn't exist yet, but every village had someone like you. They called you soft, moon-touched, or the blessed fool. And though you were different, you weren't always feared. Sometimes you were protected. There was a quiet, unwritten rule. Fools must be fed, kept warm, and tolerated. Because what if, just maybe, you were touched by God? Some fools said things before they happened. Some mimicked priests and made old women laugh. Some just sat, humming nonsense that made no sense, until it did. You might be strange, but you were useful. For laughter, for wisdom wrapped in silliness, for reminding people that not everything needs to make sense to be worth keeping around. And that's the odd beauty of being a fool. In a world ruled by order, you were chaos that somehow made people feel better, even if they never admitted it out loud. What's something weird you do that brings people joy? Share it. It might just be your medieval superpower. You ever wear a hat made of straw, mud, and feathers and get applauded for it? Or laughed at? Or both at the same time? Welcome to your new life, where you walk like a chicken, talk like a bell, and somehow people give you bread for it. You're not just the odd one anymore. You're the fool, official, recognized, almost respected. Let's talk about how that happened. You didn't apply for this role. No scrolls, no auditions. One day someone throws an old turnip at your head and says, "Make us laugh, Tom." And you do. With a loud honk and a belly flop into a mud puddle. That's it. That's the job interview. In medieval villages, the fool had a strange privilege. They could speak freely, joke about the priest, mimic the reeve, even poke fun at the miller's balding goat. And no one, usually, beat them with a stick. You, the fool, are the social release valve. People laugh with you, at you, because of you. They don't always like you, but they need you. You also get small perks. Leftover food, a dry corner in the barn, maybe even a warm seat near the hearth. Not too close, no one wants your fleas, but close enough to hear the gossip. And you remember everything, everything. Comment below. Would you trade respect for freedom of speech and free bread? Let's be honest, your outfit? It's not fashion forward, but it is memorable. Your tunic is probably stitched from 3 others, 1 green sleeve, 1 red. Your belt is a rope. Your shoes are just wishful thinking. But that's the point. In medieval life, clothes tell everyone what you are. The priest wears robes, the reeve wears fur. You wear chaos. Some fools wore bells, so you could hear them coming, like a cat with a collar. Others wore caps with horns or floppy ears or even animal skulls. Not for magic, just for attention. Because in a world where survival is dull and hard, you're the show. And maybe you love it, or maybe you hate it. But either way, you play the part. Drop your weirdest outfit ever worn story in the comments. Bonus points for feathers. Ever been in trouble and joked your way out of it? That's you, every day. Say the wrong thing in medieval Europe and you might get a whipping, or worse. But say it with a giggle and a cartwheel? They just roll their eyes. Ah, just the fool, let him babble. See, your laughter isn't just entertainment. It's a shield. A blur between truth and joke that lets you speak your mind. You tease the priest for drinking too much ale. He blushes. The crowd chuckles. And the truth, sweet, uncomfortable truth, gets tucked into the laughter. People often say, fools speak wisdom. But maybe it's just that you're the only one who can say what everyone's already thinking. Ever used humor to escape trouble? Confess in the comments, we won't tell. Now don't get it twisted. Just because you're a fool doesn't mean you're royal material. Court jesters? They live in castles, eat from plates, bathe, maybe. You're the village fool, which means fewer pearls, more pig mud. Jesters at court were sometimes educated. Some could read, some played instruments. You juggled turnips. But weirdly enough, the jobs are kind of the same. Both roles let people laugh at power, at fear, at hunger. But while the jester uses riddles, you use chicken noises and cartwheels. Yet both are needed. Because laughter keeps the sadness at bay, even if it smells like feet. Would you rather be a royal jester or a muddy village fool? Comment below. Here's the strange bit. Are you truly a fool or just pretending? Do you talk to the geese because you believe they talk back, or because people throw you apples when you do? In medieval times, the line between madness and performance was blurry. Maybe you don't even know which side you're on anymore. You act odd to survive. You exaggerate your stumbles. You hum at the moon. But late at night, when the fire dies and no one's watching, you're quiet. And in that quiet, maybe you remember, maybe you cry, or maybe you just sleep, hugging a carrot like it's your best friend. Being the fool is hard, funny, strange, and sometimes kind of beautiful. Tell us, what's one silly habit that secretly brings you peace? One morning, someone puts a meat pie in your hand without a word. Still warm. Flaky crust. You take a bite, and it's filled with peas. Just peas. Another morning, someone throws a frozen turnip at your ear. Hard. It thunks like a drum. They laugh. You laugh too, but your ear rings for a week. And that, my dear listeners, is how it goes. Some days you're fed. Other days, you're furniture. Let's walk through the odd, awkward, love-hate bond between a fool and their village. Care in a medieval village wasn't about hugs or therapy sessions. No one asked you how you were feeling. Feelings were for saints and madmen. But you might be tossed a heel of bread. Someone might slap your back hard and call you a right good chicken, which in context is praise. The village fool was often fed out of habit. He's ours, they'd say. He's odd, but ours. You weren't a friend, not exactly. But you were familiar, like that one goat with a limp. People noticed when you weren't around. They missed your nonsense. Old Marjorie might sneak you a bit of stew. Young Ned might let you sit by his fire, once. But don't push it. Too much kindness looked suspicious. That's the trick. You were tolerated, sometimes treasured, but rarely trusted. Comment below if you've ever had someone be oddly kind in a way that left you confused. Now and then, play turns rough. The boys throw cabbages. The blacksmith dares you to eat a beetle. And you do, because why not? It's protein. Sometimes you laugh first. Sometimes they laugh too hard. Medieval folks didn't have Netflix or TikTok. They had you, and frankly, that's a lot of pressure for someone with no shoes. You're pushed, teased, and dared, not always out of malice. Sometimes it's just boredom or tradition. The fool can take it, they say, and you usually do, but sometimes you hide in the thatch and pretend you're invisible. Here's the quiet truth. The village fool absorbed a lot of the community's tension, the weird weather, the lost harvest, the butcher's gout. It all trickled down into jokes at your expense. Have you ever been the group clown and wondered if they were laughing with you or at you? Let us know in the comments. Oddly enough, the more foolish you acted, the safer you were. You weren't taken seriously, which meant you weren't seen as a threat. You could wander freely, mumble to ducks, nap in the hayloft, and no one cared. That priest who feared heresy, he left you alone. That tax collector who grilled every family, he just waved you past. Being underestimated was its own kind of power. You became part of the landscape, like the old trough or the bent scarecrow. And sometimes the villagers used you as a buffer. "Don't curse us," they'd mutter during storms. "Talk to the fool instead." That's right. You were spiritual insurance, a living superstition. Ever leaned into your weirdness just to avoid trouble? Share it below. This is a judgment-free hovel. But not every day was peas and pats on the head. Some seasons, the fool was blamed. Too much rain? Must have been the fool's singing. Sheep died? Maybe he stared too long at them. Superstition ran thick. All it took was a bad omen and a whisper. Maybe we should send him away for a bit. So out you went. No ceremony. Just a shove and a muttered, go stay in the woods. Sometimes for days, sometimes longer. But you knew the paths. You had hiding spots. You built nests in the hedges, told jokes to the crows, and eventually, someone came looking. "All right, Tom, back you come. We're short a fool." And you returned. Cold, hungry, but smiling. Because what else can you do? Ever been low-key exiled from a friend group, then invited back like nothing happened? Share your medieval moment. Now and then, it's quiet. Really quiet. A child climbs into your lap. No questions, just warmth. An old woman brings you broth without a word. She hums while you slurp. She pats your head, then walks away. These moments weren't grand. No violins. Just a pause in the noise. A tiny reminder that beneath the laughter and the teasing and the turnips, you were a person. And sometimes people saw that. Not everyone. Not always. But enough to keep you from disappearing. It's a strange, lopsided kind of love. Uneven, but real in its own crooked way. What's the smallest, most unexpected act of kindness that stuck with you? Share it with us. You never know who needs to hear it. Ever farted in church? Loudly? Then pretended it was the pew creaking? Well, if you were the village fool, you didn't just get away with it. You got a giggle from the bishop. But here's the twist. People still feared you, or pitied you, or thought you were a message from God, or the devil, or both. Religion was serious business in medieval life, and you, dear fool, were either the village's comic relief or its walking cautionary tale. Let's open the chapel door and peek inside. Picture this: a dim chapel with stone walls that breathe cold into your bones. Candles flicker like nervous thoughts, and there you are, scratching your elbow and humming, "Goose, goose, hallelujah." In most villages, even fools were expected to attend church, not for theological depth, heavens no, but because absence looked suspicious, and suspicion bred pitchforks. You weren't given a pew, you stood in the back, or sat on the steps, or leaned against the holy water font like it was a tavern stool. Sometimes the priest used you in sermons. "Let not thy soul wander like this creature before us," and everyone stared. You waved. Yet oddly, no one ever told you to stop coming. You were tolerated, perhaps even needed, like the gargoyle on the church roof, ugly, unsettling, but part of the design. Ever felt like the weirdo in a very serious setting? Share your chapel cringe below. Were you holy or hopeless? Medieval villagers weren't sure. Maybe you were touched by madness or by God. Maybe both, maybe neither. One moment you were dancing in a graveyard, chasing beetles. The next you sat quietly beside a dying man and held his hand for an hour. No one asked you to. You just did. Some saw that as divine. He's simple, pure. Others whispered about devils. He hears voices. That's not holy. It's cursed. The truth? You probably didn't think much about it. You just followed your strange rhythm. One foot in reverence, one in mischief. The village fool blurred the line between sacred and profane, between laughable and profound, a living parable, or a walking bad omen. Have you ever been called both helpful and annoying by the same person? Drop your dual identity moment below. Imagine crawling into a dark wooden box to whisper your sins, and the priest peeks through and says, "You again?" Yeah, you've been in here a lot. Confession wasn't just for dukes and dames. Even you, the fool, got your turn. Although sometimes it was more like rambling than repenting. I stole a pie, but it was already half eaten, so really, I only stole half. The priest listens, maybe sighs, maybe smiles. Here's a strange fact. Medieval clergy sometimes believed fools were closer to God, like children, like saints, untouched by the pride of intellect, so even your nonsense was treated gently, maybe even seriously. You confessed, you cried, then you giggled, then you snuck a second wafer from the altar, because even fools want forgiveness and snacks, Have you ever spilled way too much during a casual chat? Confession-style moments welcome in the comments. So, you joined the procession, everyone wore robes, you wore a flour sack, they sang hymns, you chimed in with goose noises, yet somehow you were still part of it, because no one quite knew how to say no. You held the incense once, dropped it in a puddle, laughed for 3 hours. That was the day the priest banned you from holy smoke duties. But during candlelight vigils, you stayed up all night, quiet, still, watching, and the next morning a widow swore you looked like an angel, a dirty, barefoot, feather-wearing angel, but an angel nonetheless. Fools stumbled into sacred spaces and made them weird, but also human. Comment if you've ever tried to help and made things hilariously worse. No one expected you to pray, but some nights, alone in the stables, you did. Not with words, just whispers, songs to no one, or to something. You watched the stars and talked to them, left crumbs on the chapel steps for the little ghosts. Maybe your faith wasn't proper, but it was real as aching feet and empty bellies. Medieval religion wasn't just incense and Latin. It was hope, survival, the idea that someone, somewhere, saw you. And maybe in the silence between jokes, you saw them back. What's one quiet thing you do that gives you peace? Doesn't have to make sense. Just share. Ever wake up with a chicken foot in your mouth and think, ah yes, another blessed morning? If you're the village fool, that's not a metaphor. That's breakfast. Your days don't begin with sun salutations or scented candles. They begin with cold mud between your toes and a goose honking judgment into your face. Let's walk through it. A day in the life of someone everyone sees, but few really notice. You don't have a bed or a room or really any belongings that can't fit in your hat, so you sleep where the village forgets to shoo you away, inside a hay bale, beneath the tavern steps. Once, someone caught you curled up in the bell tower. Every surface is lumpy. Everything smells like goat. And every morning you're awoken by something new. A rooster pecking your nose, a cat kneading your ribs, a child drawing on your forehead. But there's a charm in unpredictability, right? Keeps the joints loose. Your bones crack like firewood when you stand. Your cloak is soaked from morning dew, or worse. And somehow, you're smiling. Because this is your kingdom, a crusty corner of the world where waking up wrong is just waking up. Comment below, what's the weirdest place you've ever slept? Now it's time to eat, but not like you imagine. Forget porridge or bacon. Your breakfast depends entirely on what you can charm, steal, or be tossed out of pity. Sometimes the baker throws a burnt crust your way. Sometimes you find a bit of cheese stuck to a wheelbarrow. And sometimes you lick honey off a windowsill. It's not dignified, but you've got your tricks. You juggle turnips until the milkmaid laughs and tosses you a fig. You dance for the shepherd's dog until someone hands you stew. You impersonate the priest's hiccups and win an egg. You're not fed. You earn it. One performance at a time. What's your go-to scrap meal when the fridge is empty? Share below. Most of your day is spent wandering. You don't work. Not like the blacksmith or the reeve, but you move from square to stable, from mill pond to market. You observe. You know who's cheating at dice, who sneaks out at night, whose chickens lay square eggs. You're invisible enough to overhear everything. People mutter, "It's just the fool." So they speak freely, and you remember it all. Sometimes you talk to animals, sometimes to trees. Once, a bucket. It never replied, but it made you laugh. The village thinks you're aimless, but you're collecting sounds, secrets, stories. Ever gone on a walk just to listen to the world? What did you hear? Drop it below. By midday, you're warmed up, and so is the crowd. You might perform for children near the well. Balance a spoon on your nose. Recite bad poetry about frogs. Chase geese in slow motion. Or you might get roped into helping someone. You carry firewood and drop every log. You sweep the inn with your hat. You milk a cow and get headbutted into a trough. People laugh, sometimes with you, sometimes not, but your presence keeps spirits up. Your chaos breaks the rhythm. Your nonsense is the village's breathing room, so you keep tumbling, juggling, humming, because somewhere between all that silliness, you belong. What's the most ridiculous thing you've done to make someone laugh? Tell us below. As the sun drops, your pace slows. You might sneak by the tavern, nose tilted at the stew steam. You might join a family's fire circle. On the edge, always on the edge. They talk. You hum. They forget you're there. And that's the best part. You stare at the fire and see dragons. Or angels. Or a loaf of bread with legs. It depends on the day. At night, everything softens. People stop teasing. They nod at you instead of mocking. Sometimes someone shares a blanket or a song, and eventually you curl up under the stars, belly half full, heart humming strange music. A fool, yes, but not alone. What's your perfect end-of-day comfort ritual? Share your peaceful little habits below. Ever had a best friend who licked a frog just to see what would happen? No? Then maybe you've never been a fool, because the people you bond with, they're not always the noble sort. They're the folks other folks overlook, the crooked, the strange, the hilariously lost. But that's where the magic lives, in muddy corners and awkward silences. Let's meet the oddballs who love the fool, and what that says about being human. The blind pig herder, the mute girl who talks with sticks, the boy who never wears shoes, even in frost. These are your people. They don't stare, don't ask questions. They just sit near you, or toss you a pebble, or whistle a tune and hope you join in. You play games that make no sense, like counting clouds shaped like cheese, or daring each other to sniff the blacksmith's socks. You laugh more, you understand less, but that's the point. Misfits don't need explanations. They just need space, and that space somehow grows when you're together. Comment below if your childhood bestie was a fellow weirdo, and what your weirdest game was. Your truest friend? A one-eyed donkey named Bramble? She follows you everywhere, even into the bakery once. You got shooed, she got fed. Animals don't judge your muttering. They love unwashed cloaks and odd routines. The goats recognize your whistle. The geese tolerate you. That's a win. There's something grounding about brushing a sheep who doesn't care if you rhyme every sentence. And when you're low, really low, Bramble rests her head on your lap. Heavy, warm, like saying, "Still here, you smelly bard." Sometimes 4 legs love better than 2. Got a strange bond with an animal? Comment your Bramble below. One day, the Reeve shares his apple. Not a word. Just a bite passed from palm to palm. The priest lets you ring the bell, once, then covers his ears. Even the tavern mistress, who once chased you with a ladle, stitches your sleeve while pretending not to. People who shouldn't care sometimes do. Quietly, briefly. But it sticks. You learn to spot kindness like a squirrel spots crumbs. Blink and you miss it moments of grace. They don't invite you inside, but they leave the door cracked. And that's enough to feel like you exist. What's the smallest act of kindness that stayed with you for years? Share it in the comments. Even fools get into squabbles. You trade insults with a boy who called your hat moldy cabbage. You throw a turnip. He throws 2. The mute girl glares at you for chasing her cat. You try to juggle onions as apology. Friendships on the fringe are raw. Less words, more feelings. But here's the wonder. No one holds grudges for long. You patch things up without speeches. A shared crust, a silly dance, a wink. Forgiveness lives in the awkward spaces. No declarations, just being there again. Ever made up with someone in the weirdest way? Tell us your turnip moment. At the end of the day, when even Bramble snores, there's only you. And maybe that's the strangest friendship of all. You hum tunes no one taught you. Whisper riddles into the dark. Laugh at your own farts. You know when you're scared. You know when you're safe. You carry your grief in one pocket, your joy in the other. Some might call you lonely, but you're whole. Fools aren't alone because they're unloved. They're alone because they live sideways. And when you look up at the stars, you smile, because you've got you. What's one thing you secretly love about your own weird brain? Let's celebrate it in the comments. Ever laugh so hard at a falling leaf that you fell too? No? Then you've never walked through autumn in bare feet, slipping on wet apples and shouting, "The trees are shedding," like it's a scandal. Seasons change everything in a medieval village. And for the fool, who owns no calendar, no clock, and not even 2 matching shoes, it's the world shifting underfoot. Let's dance through the seasons, one squelchy step at a time. Spring begins with a sneeze, literally. You wake up in a puddle of melted frost and cow breath, sneeze a worm into your own sleeve, and grin like it's a miracle. Everything's damp. Everything smells like wet cabbage, and the geese are aggressive again. But also, buds on trees, lambs wobbling like fluffy drunks, beetles big enough to name. You chase bees for the hum of it, make a crown of dandelions, and declare yourself Lord of Pollen. Villagers grumble about chores. You giggle at worms, and sometimes someone catches your laugh, and laughs too. Because spring reminds everyone, life's messy, and returning. Do you love the smell of rain, or does it just smell like wet laundry? Drop your spring mood below. Summer is bare feet on hot stones, bread crusts tossed from open windows, sunburn on your left ear. You spend afternoons pretending to be a millstone, rolling down hills, singing to frogs, poking eels with a stick named Gregory. The village sweats. You shimmer. Children are home from their field duties, which means more audience, more games, more jellyfish impressions in the duck pond. There's a girl who gives you cherries when no one's looking. There's a boy who lets you bury his sandals, just once. And when the sun sets, everything smells like hay and onions, and you, sticky, silly, sun-dazed, feel like the whole world is golden. What weird thing did you love doing every summer as a kid? Let's hear your Gregory stories. Autumn creeps in like a cat with wet paws. The leaves turn orange and brittle. The wind starts whispering, and you lose your socks. Again. But harvest time means extra food if you linger near the right barns. A dropped apple, a bruised pear, a crust that accidentally falls your way. You help by not helping. You stir the cauldron once. You shout, "Worm," during cider bottling. You pretend to be a scarecrow for 5 hours. The air smells like wood smoke and pickles. The sky forgets how to stay blue. And one night under the changing moon, you build a little fire alone, and you feel not sad, just full, like autumn itself. Ever felt weirdly emotional just seeing leaves fall? It's okay. We get it. Share your autumn heart. Winter punches you in the nose every morning. Your cloak stiffens overnight. Your toes feel like frozen beans. You learn which cows emit the most heat. The village retreats indoors. But you find warmth where you can. A bakery wall, a chimney nook, a pig pen once. Don't ask. You tell jokes that make no sense just to make people smile while they shiver. You mime icicles falling off noses. You catch snowflakes on your tongue and miss half of them. Sometimes someone gives you soup. Sometimes someone gives you a look that feels like soup. Winter doesn't hate you. It just challenges your cheer. And you rise to meet it. One giggle at a time. How do you fight the winter gloom? Fire? Socks? Dance? Drop your cure for cold days. You don't track time with calendars. You track it with feelings. There's the season of everything's funny. You wear radishes on your head and giggle nonstop. Then there's the season of heavy feet, where laughter feels hard and your coat feels too tight. You sit by yourself more. You hum in a minor key. But you know, like the sky shifts and the geese scream, you'll move through it. And suddenly, someone throws a crust your way. Or a goat sneezes, or a kid draws a mustache on your face, and spring returns, inside and out. Do your moods change with seasons? Or with soup? Tell us your heart's weather. Have you ever danced so hard your shoe flew into a pie? That's how festivals start for the fool, with a crash, a laugh, a goose honking in outrage. In the village, festivals aren't just holy days, they're release valves for sorrow, for boredom, for the sour smell of unwashed tunics. And on those days, even the fool gets a stage. Let's step into the ribbons, the drums, the mud pies, and the odd little magic that makes festivals feel like dreams wrapped in cabbage leaves. The morning of the festival smells like onions, sweat, and wood smoke. People shout at each other lovingly, or not so lovingly, while hoisting tents, roasting things, and tripping over pigs. The fool, you offer help by juggling eggs badly, handing people tools they didn't ask for, and singing off-key versions of the village anthem. Someone gives you a ribbon to wear. Someone else takes it away. It was meant for the maypole. Preparations are chaos with buttered hands. But there's laughter, there's snapping fabric, there's a shared breath of, we made it another season. Comment if your family holidays also start with panic and someone losing a shoe. Festival food is not always good. Sometimes it's just interesting, like pickled radishes dipped in honey, or sausages that scream when cooked. Okay, maybe that was the goose nearby. But you, the fool, get scraps of everything. Burnt crusts, sticky jam, mystery stew. You chew slowly. You make faces. You tell the baker her cabbage loaf tastes like regret and sandals. She laughs. Food makes people open, loose, grinning with greasy lips. You eat with your hands. You share with dogs. You wipe your face with your sleeve. And no one judges. Because on festival day, everyone's a bit of a fool. What's the weirdest thing you've eaten and survived? Drop your culinary confessions below. Let's be honest, you don't win many games. You trip during sack races. You bite the apple and the string in bobbing contests. You invent new sports like who can pretend to be bred the longest. But the crowd loves it. You make them laugh. Not at you, but with you. That's power. The blacksmith's boy gives you his prize, half a pie and a wink. The mayor's daughter lets you cut the ribbon to open the dancing. You feel seen, not mocked, not shooed. You belong. For a whole afternoon, ever lost the game but stole the show? Tell us your best didn't win, but kinda did moment. Dancing? Well, you try. You step on toes, spin the wrong way, tangle in skirts, somehow end up under the maypole instead of around it. But you're grinning. The tambourines rattle. Someone hands you a wooden flute. You play 3 notes, then sneeze into it. Dancing disasters are kind of your specialty. But that's okay. You make rhythm with your clogs. You hum the wrong tune, loud, and then someone links your hand. And you're dancing. Badly. Beautifully. Ever danced so wrong it felt right? Comment your most awkward but joyful dance moment. As twilight settles, lanterns glow, candles flicker, the bonfire roars. You're invited to tell a story, people gather around, you stutter, you mix up names, you forget half the plot and invent the rest. They love it, because your stories come from the heart, from cow pastures and chimney smoke, from goat sneezes and moonlit puddles. You speak. They listen. For once, no one interrupts. The fire crackles. A baby giggles. Someone hands you a roasted turnip. And for a flickering moment, you are the center. Have you ever shared something silly that turned into something special? Drop your best fool's tale below. Ever woken up convinced a chicken was judging you? That's how dreams start when you sleep next to turnips and the church bell rings louder in your skull than in your ears. The fool doesn't have a bed or a blanket, just hay, moonlight, and an imagination that won't stay quiet. Let's tiptoe into the strange, sleepy world of medieval nights, where shadows dance, thoughts swirl, and dreams carry the fool farther than his bare feet ever could. You lie in a pile of straw that smells like damp wool and onion skins. A cricket chirps in your ear, a cat kneads your shoulder, a beetle the size of your thumb wanders over your nose, and still you try to sleep. The stars blink through holes in the roof. The wind whistles secrets. Someone snores 2 cottages over. You hum a tune about cheese. You count sheep until one kicks you. Sleep is shy. It waits until your brain stops listing pie ingredients and your toes stop twitching. And just when you think you'll never drift off, you do. Do you fall asleep fast, or is your brain a medieval jester juggling regrets? Comment below. Dreams get weird quickly. You're running, through molasses, in your undergarments, with a pie on your head. A goat appears. He's wearing a crown. He says, "You failed the cabbage test." You nod solemnly. You don't know what the cabbage test is. That's the beauty of dreams. They make sense until they don't. Sometimes you wake up sweating from imagined fire, or giggling from a dream dance, or terrified that your toes turned into frogs. In medieval times, people believed dreams came from demons, saints, or indigestion. You believe they come from stew. Have you had a dream so odd you told no one? Tell Zuzu. I collect weird dreams like shiny rocks. The village at night sounds different. The cows grunt softly. A rooster forgets the hour. The wind rattles shutters. And shadows, they dance. Your fire flickers and the wall turns into a puppet show of wolves, trees, and a version of you with much better posture. You tell yourself stories. You make shadow rabbits. You invent songs about spoons. Night is quiet, but never silent, never still. And in that soft stir of sounds and shapes, your mind wanders, sometimes far, sometimes just in circles. What's the weirdest thing you've seen in the dark and misidentified? Shadow cat? Coat ghost? Let's hear it. Sometimes you can't sleep, so you walk, barefoot on cold cobbles, through misty lanes, past the mill where the wheel creaks like it's dreaming too. The night smells like ashes and river moss. Your breath fogs in the moonlight. You see other wanderers, the baker's apprentice with a secret pie, an old woman talking to her goat. A ghost? Maybe. Or just your neighbor Harold. You whisper to the stars. You practice jokes to the wind. You sit by the duck pond and contemplate the meaning of quacks. Walking clears your head or fills it with quieter nonsense. Do you ever go on night walks? What's your favorite late-hour thought? Leave it below like a trail of breadcrumbs. And then, it's morning. Birds shriek like tiny banshees. Your hip hurts. Your tongue tastes like lint. You sit up. There's a feather in your mouth, a chicken under your arm. No idea how it got there. But the sky is pink. The dew is silver. The world, despite everything, kept turning. You yawn. You stretch. You grin. Last night's fears, shadows, last night's dreams, feathers, and today, you start again. Same tunic, new thoughts, ever woken up weird and thought, well, that happened? Tell us your strangest morning moments. Ever patched a hole with mashed peas and hope? Because once, the fool tried that. On a leaky roof, during a thunderstorm, it didn't work, but it smelled strangely comforting. In the village, healing isn't always the work of a wise old herbalist with 37 herbs and one mysterious jar labeled, "Don't ask." Sometimes healing is laughter, a distraction, a warm hand, or a clumsy song, and surprisingly often it's the fool who brings it. Let's lean into those moments, quiet, humble, and oddly sticky, when the fool mended more than anyone expected. Old Magnus stubbed his toe on a rock shaped like a smug pig. He shouted words not found in church texts. Then he sat in the dirt, grumpy and pained. You, the fool, knelt beside him with all the grace of a wet squirrel. You examined his toe like it was a royal artifact. You blew on it, you hummed, you tied it gently with a ribbon left over from the maypole. And Magnus? He laughed. He forgot the pain for a bit. Or at least it didn't matter as much. Turns out the fool doesn't need a cure, just comfort. Ever had someone comfort you in a weird but helpful way? Drop your unexpected healers in the comments. Mistress Elna, the baker, was found crying over a collapsed loaf. "It sank," she whispered, as though mourning a ship. You gasped, loudly, then dramatically threw flour on your head in solidarity. She blinked, then snorted, then laughed. You both ended up on the floor, giggling, covered in dough, and definitely not making more bread. But her eyes weren't so red anymore. Sometimes healing isn't about fixing, it's about feeling seen. Has laughter ever pulled you out of something heavy? Tell us your best, "I laughed through the mess" moment. The miller's cat had something stuck in its paw. The miller panicked. The cat panicked. The fool? You offered a sardine. It worked. While the cat chewed, you gently plucked the thorn with fingers trained by years of splinter removal, mostly your own. The cat didn't scratch you, not even once. The miller said you had the fool's touch. You like that. Even the animals trusted you, maybe especially them. Ever bonded with an animal in a weird situation? Share your furball miracles below. Gerda, the midwife, had a cough. She'd been tired, tense, so you followed her for a whole day, narrating her every move in a ridiculous royal voice. "Behold, she boils the cabbage of destiny." She tried to ignore you, failed, then smirked, then howled with laughter so loud it scared the pigs. The cough? Still there. But she said she felt better. Sometimes laughter clears things deeper than lungs. Comment if someone's silliness has ever saved your sanity, or if you've been the one handing out joy like crusty bread. And once you did nothing. Old Marta lost her son. No one knew what to say. You didn't either, so you just sat on her porch, picking at a splinter, offering half a plum, whistling a tune about ducks. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, but she put her hand on yours. Sometimes healing is in silence, in being there, in simply not leaving. And for once, the fool's silence spoke volumes. Ever sat with someone quietly and known it mattered? Share your being there stories below. You ever laugh at something silly, and then 10 minutes later go, "Wait, was that actually deep?" Yeah, that's what happens when the fool speaks. His hat jingles. His jokes fall flat. But sometimes between fart noises and goose impressions, he says something that lingers in your brain like the smell of onions on a warm stone. Let's sit with 5 foolish moments where the giggle wore off, but the message stayed. One market day, you crowned the town donkey, a cabbage leaf on its head, a carrot scepter in its mouth. You shouted, "All hail his royal chewiness," and led a parade through the square. Everyone laughed, but old Brother Theobald stopped mid-chuckle and muttered, "Sometimes the donkey is more just than the king." You looked up, blinking. Was that wisdom? From you? Turns out mockery can be a mirror, and sometimes fools hold it better than scholars. Have you ever heard a silly joke that made you think too much? Share your favorite accidental wisdom below. Mistress Elna once asked, "Why do you talk to bread?" You replied solemnly, "Because bread never interrupts." She rolled her eyes. Then she paused. Actually, that's kind of lovely. See, the fool often says the opposite of what's expected. And in that little flip of the world, there's truth. You don't need big words to spark thought. Sometimes you just need a crusty companion and a bad pun. Comment if you've ever made someone think with a dumb joke, or if you've been the one blindsided by a loaf of wisdom. During a boring sermon, you stood up and preached about turnips. Turnips don't lie, they don't gossip, they just grow. Half the village glared, the other half applauded. The priest turned purple, and little Jacob whispered, "I want to be a turnip." You shrugged. Not a bad goal, honestly. Sometimes the fool says what everyone else is too afraid to, or too proper, even if it's through a vegetable. Has someone ever said something odd but kind of right? Tell us your favorite truth veggie. You held a cracked mirror in the town square. Who wants to see their true self? You asked. Most laughed. A few stepped forward. Then you showed them, themselves, distorted. You didn't say much. You just waited. Some people laughed, some frowned, some walked away quiet. Turns out the fool doesn't explain. He just presents, and lets the truth land wherever it needs to. Ever had a moment where something silly hit a little too close to home? Drop your mirror moments in the comments. One winter's night, the tavern was rowdy. You danced, sang, spilled cider on your tunic. Everyone howled. Then you paused, stared at the fire, and whispered, "Funny how we laugh hardest when the cold is loudest." No one spoke for a moment. Even laughter needs pauses, and fools know when to let them breathe. Because sometimes the space between jokes says the most. Have you ever found meaning in a moment that wasn't meant to be meaningful? Let us know below. You ever seen a chicken look sad? Because the day the fool went missing, even the hens clucked different. They pecked at the dirt like something had been forgotten beneath it. Like maybe a joke was buried there, just out of reach. It wasn't a grand departure, no trumpet, no scroll, just silence and a scarf stuck on a tree branch. Let's sit together, just one more time, and listen to what was left behind. Usually your mornings began with something absurd, a chicken in the bread oven, goats tied to the baker's stool, or the fool trying to wear cabbage leaves as socks again. But that day, just stillness. The sun came up like it had somewhere else to be. Birds chirped too politely. And when Mistress Elna opened her door, she didn't smile. She just looked around like something had been stolen. The fool's hut was empty, the door ajar, one boot on the roof. Even silence can feel loud when a presence is missing. Ever felt the hole someone leaves before you even know they're gone? Share your "where'd they go" moments below. Inside the fool's hut, chaos, predictable chaos. A string of mismatched spoons tied to the ceiling like wind chimes, half a loaf painted blue, a sketch of a pig riding a horse, upside down, and a box. Inside, just this, a plum pit, a chicken feather, and a ribbon, the one from Magnus's toe. He didn't leave money, or maps, just memories. But that ribbon made Magnus cry. The big kind of cry. The snotty one. And no one said a word. Sometimes the stuff people leave behind is louder than their voice. Have you ever found something that meant more than it looked? Comment your tiniest treasures. At first, everyone tried to carry on. The miller whistled badly. Elna told a joke about butter that didn't land. Even the priest tried juggling apples, not his strength. But slowly it shifted. Kids made up games the fool would have loved. Gerda snorted while stirring soup, remembering the cabbage of destiny. Even old Marta wore a ribbon in her hair. Grief isn't just sadness. It's a whole joy learns to dance around. And somehow, laughter came back. Not the same, but close enough to feel like home. Have you ever carried someone's spirit in something silly? Tell us the joke that still makes you cry laugh. Whispers started. He joined a troupe. He became a hermit. I saw him in the next town, arguing with a goose. No proof, just stories. But people wanted them to be true, because some people are too big to stay still, or maybe too needed everywhere to stay anywhere. So now, when a stranger makes your baby laugh, or when a goat shows up wearing a bonnet, someone always says, "That's the fool, just passing through." Ever met someone who felt like they carried a whole story? Drop your strange stranger stories below. Years later, they still talked about him. When crops failed, someone would say, "The fool would have planted jelly beans." When kids were scared, they got told about the brave fool who once danced into a thunderstorm in a tin bucket. The stories changed, got wilder, more magical. But the feeling stayed the same. He wasn't a hero, not really, not a saint, just someone who stayed kind, who showed up, who made people feel seen, even when they were trying very hard not to be. And maybe, just maybe, that's all it takes to live forever. What memory of someone still lives in you, even if they've gone? Share your little echo in the comments. And that, my friends, is the end of our journey. No battles, no crowns, just laughter, echoes, and one missing boot. If this story made you smile, even just a little, leave a ribbon emoji in the comments. And if your eyes are getting heavy, good. That means the fool did his job. See you next time, traveler. Keep your heart weird and your cabbage warm. Zuzu.